Hey Kendra, thank you for joining me today. I appreciate. I think I saw a couple of your posts originally on LinkedIn and was I was impressed with the level of authenticity that I thought you brought to the platform, which I think is it occurs to me as scary on LinkedIn. I feel like I can get a certain level of authenticity on Instagram and TikTok, but LinkedIn I feel like is kind of stuffy, and it's like you're supposed to give this like really corporate side, and I thought you were letting letting out some of the raw stuff like be shared. So I really appreciated that. So that was part of the reason I reached out, and I think you have a strong voice on here. And then I was reading more about your Beyond the Ninth and trying to understand like what are the problems. I think that's kind of what I wanted to talk with you about today was like what I recognize, at least in the domestic sphere, that a lot of moms feel lonely and that they're the only ones holding like the cognitive load, the emotional load at home. But I'd love to learn more about like what do you feel like a lot of working moms out there, and when I say working, obviously talking about the folks that are in a corporate setting or in a outside of the home setting, but what is the struggle that is having them feel alone?
So, first of all, so awesome to be here. I'm excited to talk to you. The loneliness comes in the transitional time from becoming a mother to returning to work. Before we have a child, we are ourselves. We are identified by who we are as a person, the work that we do, the hobbies that we have, the things that we enjoy doing day to day. Once we actually have a baby, everything changes and we're not prepared for that typically. And I think that's when the loneliness starts is all of a sudden you are a different person who you were before having a child and who you are today after having a child is a 100%, 180-degree, whatever you want to call it, you're a completely different person. And that feels scary. And it feels oftentimes like there's nobody else on the planet that's experiencing what you're experiencing. Then a few months later, you have to transition back into the workforce. And a lot of times that changes. You maybe don't want to work the hours that you worked before. Your body is probably not recovered. You might be going through postpartum depression. Your hormones are still imbalanced. And so, again, we're expected to kind of be the person that we were before, but we're not that person. And so, all of a sudden, this kind of like loneliness starts to set in where you feel again like you're the only person on the planet that's going through that. I know I experienced it. I talk to women every single day that are experiencing it, and we just don't talk about it enough. And I think that there's kind of this like scary thing with saying how we feel, especially as we're transitioning back into the workforce, because we don't want to start setting off any alarms or red flags to our employer that perhaps things have changed for us.
So it's almost like the authenticity you would love to have with your employer is like, hey, I'm dealing with all these things. I have foggy brain from just having a child, and you'd love to share those things. Like when I left my employer back in December, I wanted to tell them what I was doing 6 weeks in advance, and everyone's like, "No, Zach, just let them know like the week of, or like 2 weeks as a courtesy, because they can just let you go otherwise." So I think it sounds a lot like that, and like feeling like the things that you're going through, you can't tell with your employer, and at the same time, like a lot of the people in and around you expect you to be the version of yourself that you were. But now that you're going through matrescence, like people don't appreciate or understand matrescence. I think there was a post you had talked about where it was like, I think it was you, where the person that the manager that you had at the time, you were telling them, "Hey, like there was COVID at our school, and we had to take our kid back home. Like they can't go to daycare." And she's like, "It's always something with you." And I was like,
Right.
I can see where you would hope, especially as another mom, she would be understanding and she would hear that and be like, "Oh man, like I totally get it." But you feel like you can't share that, and the loneliness isn't like a lack of an ability to confide in people.
Yeah. So I think the problem with employers is that employers are graceful to working moms, especially a lot of employers are graceful to working moms, especially as they're transitioning back into the workforce. The grace runs out. If you are the kind of mom that consistently needs, doctor's appointments, daycare is closed, this, that, the other thing, your employer and your manager all of a sudden get to a point where they're like, I've had enough. We're not going to give you grace anymore, even though that grace has to continue. Becoming a parent doesn't all of a sudden stop at a certain point once you return to work. The obligations are there daily, and the things that you have to deal with are there daily. And so, unfortunately, the grace runs out, the patience runs out. And then we're kind of stuck in this sort of hard place of feeling like, do I continue to be honest, or do I run the risk of alienating my employer and making it seem like I'm not as engaged as I should be? And so therein lies the loneliness. Like, what do I do? Do I be honest, or do I kind of just sit and suffer in silence? Um, and I think the loneliness also comes in, like, moms aren't talking about this. Moms are afraid to talk to their partners about this because a lot of times they don't really know what they're going through. Matrescence is a word that I honestly learned just probably about 3 or 4 months ago. Knew I was going through something, but I didn't know that it had a word, and I didn't know that it was an actual thing that every single mom experiences. And so therein lies the loneliness again, is like just this, you don't know what you're going through. You don't know why you're going through it. And you kind of feel like you're a little bit crazy, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, and I feel like I harp on language so often. I think one with like my corporate clients, but also with the guys that I work with. And I think I I'm realizing that the knowing that there's a word for it tells us that, oh, someone is already experiencing this. In fact,
Somebody's
there's a lot
studying
of people
this.
experiencing this
Yeah.
that where it's worth like having a label to it. And so I feel like that's why so many people have resonated with my mental load series, is because all of a sudden the anxiety and the pain that they were feeling all of a sudden had something worth labeling. Uh, Stacy is saying, "This is what happened to me when I faced premenopause a couple of years ago. No way I could find my employer, but I seriously considered taking disability." Wow. What do you feel like? So I know that like you run the Beyond the Ninth community, and you consistently are helping, I think, a lot of women feel not alone. Like, how do you go about having these mothers feel not alone? Is it validation? Is it just a community to share? Like, how do you do it?
So I think validation is a huge key part of it. I did not create Beyond the Ninth to solve women's problems. I did not create Beyond the Ninth to make things easier. I can't make things easier day to day. I created Beyond the Ninth to say, I see you, I hear you. I'm going through the exact same things that you're going through. And so are hundreds of thousands of women across the globe. And just having that recognition and that kind of like soul connection with other mothers, that truly you don't even know that that exists until you become part of the mom club. You don't know that there's this kind of unspoken connection among mothers. And that's why Beyond the Ninth was created, so that when you're having a bad day, you can hop into the community and say, I'm struggling today. I'm struggling with my 2-year-old. I'm struggling with meal planning. I'm struggling with postpartum. I'm struggling with my job, anything, and have an army of women saying, I see you, I feel you, I know what you're going through. I can't fix it, but I'm here with you, and I'm giving you virtual support from afar. And just that connection and that support and positivity, again, it doesn't take all of the things away that you're going through, but that validation, you hit on that word, it's the perfect word for it. That validation just helps mothers feel like, I'm not alone. Beyond the Ninth was actually started because of a conversation that I was having. It was a random LinkedIn conversation with another mom. I thought we were going to be talking about marketing. We ended up having this soul to soul conversation. She has an 18-month-old baby, and she was like, I'm drowning. I'm drowning. I don't want to be working as much as I'm working. I miss my baby. And I, at that time, had a 3-year-old. And she said to me, does it ever get better? And I said, it kind of gets better. It doesn't, it changes. I said, you're in the thick of it. You have an 18-month-old, you're just sending her to daycare. Like, she was in the thick of it. And all she wanted was the validation to say, I know what you're going through. I went through the same thing myself with my 2 babies. And I'm giving you a hug from, she was in Boston, I was in San Diego. I'm giving you a hug from afar. And I know what you're going through. And that's why Beyond the Ninth was started.
You said that you're not solving women's problems, and I'm going to challenge that hypothesis. So I feel like there's a couple of couples that I work with one-on-one, and one of the things that I often recognize is, yes, the guy needs to understand the mental load in the home, and that's what we're going to work on together in our program. But at the same time, when the two of you guys are coming together and talking about things, yeah, there's like that educational awareness piece that's missing for him. But between the two of you in this moment, or like on a consistent basis, to be able to hand off awareness and mental load is validation in the management and the regulation of feelings. And I would argue so many of our like problems of like, I don't have enough money, or I have debt, or the deadline that I have and the amount of time that I have are not congruent, or like my child needs me and I also need to send this important email in the next 30 minutes. Like, those are like those problems that I think you're talking about can't be solved. However, I think the experience of being able to self-regulate or regulate in some sort of way, such that we can do those things without like a head full of like emotional labor, or like managing, what am I trying to say? There's like the clerical problems, there's the physical problems, and then there's the emotional problems. And I think
Yeah.
you solve a huge part of that emotional problem, and it's hitting on loneliness. I did a post recently on Instagram where I asked, like, when the guy doesn't understand what I made a video saying, it's not about the socks, it's not about the dishes, it's not about X, Y, and Z. It's that she feels lonely and she feels hurt that you don't see these things. And I said, ladies, I think I got it right. Did I get it right? And I said, like, which emotion do you feel the most? And lonely like smashed all of
Mm-hmm.
the other ones. It was lonely, hurt, and like not even close to any of the other ones. So when you're in your community and you're almost solving loneliness, like, why do you think, what kind of courage does it take for someone to join a group and acknowledge that loneliness is their current pain point?
I think it's scary because when you acknowledge the feelings that you're going through, you also probably recognize that some work needs to be done. And I think that that's a scary thing for people, right? I know for myself, I don't like journaling because sometimes I don't like the things that come out when I'm journaling because I think, shoot, I think I need to work on that. Or, gosh, this is actually worse than I thought it was. So I think a lot of times women join the community because it's that baby step, right? It's okay, I'm joining a mom community that focuses on, helping to support mothers in a positive way. And that's a baby step. And then maybe for a while they kind of, browse through the discussion boards and maybe they like a few things or they comment on a few things. And that's another baby step. And then all of a sudden, sometimes we reach our breaking point, right? Where it's that last little thing. It's the toddler tantrum after you've had a long day at work. It's traffic on the way home and being late to pick up. It's that one last little thing that all of a sudden, that's when they come to the community and they say, this thing just happened. I'm at my breaking point. And hopefully then the community can pour into them. But I think a lot of times it's observation that sort of happens along the way. And that's the baby steps that they need to kind of to trust the community too, right? Like you're joining a group, there's 650 people, women in this group, and it can feel scary, right? Like I'm an introvert, I feel really scared being vulnerable and open about things that I'm going through. And I think a lot of other women feel that same way. So there's kind of this observation that happens. And then once they see like this is a trusting, safe space for me to be open and vulnerable and share about the loneliness that I'm going through. That I think is really where the magic starts to happen, when all of a sudden they start seeing all the, the comments and things like that saying, I've been there. Have you thought about doing this? I see you, all of those things. That's really when I think that validation starts to occur.
What do you think about it is in our culture that, I mean, it was a free community. I tried joining and you booted me out appropriately. Um, but like, what do you think, given that it's like the ability to access it, like I was able to access it pretty quick. Um, what is it about our culture that puts extra emotional friction into like joining a group like that?
um I don't know if there's emotional friction or if it's just like it's an action that needs to be taken. And again, joining a community like that maybe kind of then hits you with the reality that you need that support. And we don't like to admit that we're going through a hard spot, right? It's just kind of like you go along and you go along and everything's good. Look at me, I'm spinning all these plates. The meals are on the table. I made it to work on time. I took a shower one time this week. You know what I mean? Like I'm keeping it together. But then all of a sudden you join that community and it's like, it's kind of a realization that, okay, I kind of need something. I need like a little bit of extra support. And I think that's where the friction comes from. It's like that self-realization that things aren't perfect.
What's one of the coolest things that you've seen from your community that's like banded together to help each other?
The thing that I always love to see is when mamas come and join, the thing that we encourage them to do when they join the community is to just say hello. There's a space in the community only for saying hello, introducing yourself. And for me, it's kind of interesting because I can see behind the scenes that there's a lot of women that join. And again, they're observers for a long time. And maybe weeks or months will go by before they say hello. But once they say hello, it seems like all of a sudden that like first step is taken and you start to see people welcoming them to the community. My favorite thing is when people post pictures of their family and you get all of these other mamas that just like see how happy you are posting of your family. And no matter what you're going through, you're proud. The pride shows, you're showing your family. The other thing that I always love to see is that we're a community for working moms. And a lot of times women have struggles with this bridge of going back to work. They are not the same person that they were before they had their baby. And so they're like, I don't want to be working 8, 9, 10 hours a day. I don't necessarily want to be going into the office every single day. I need to be able to pick my kids up at 2 o'clock when school is out. And so there's a lot of support specifically around that kind of like, corporate change that happens. And it's amazing to see women kind of jump in and make suggestions or recommendations on how they can make career life work, even though matrescence is starting to set in. And kind of chime in and help and say, talk to your HR manager about this, or kind of give each other that really, really almost tactical feedback on how to adjust things in their career now that they're a mom.
I'm hoping I'm saying it right. Aram said, we were just talking this morning that in society we generally make it harder to ask for help. I was reading this book from Liz Plank, For the Love of Men, and she talks about how so often men are even less likely to ask for help. Like I'm imagining like a Beyond the Ninth for men, and I'm just thinking like that won't
They'd be
exist
like, no,
because
I'm good.
yeah, like I mean, I run a community like that to help men understand mental load, but like 99% of them come to me because their wives are like, "Would you just go learn from that guy Zach?" Um, here, says, for example, veterans, we make it more challenging for them to receive benefits. Yeah, and that even that in itself is like having them admit like I need help, I can't, bootstrap my way up. Um, and I know they talked about in her book, she talks about like toxic masculinity being a reason for men not being able to reach out. What do you think it is for women? I think you had touched on like women wanting to feel like they have it together. Do you think that the mid 2010s of Instagram were like a dangerous place for moms to go? I feel like it's changed over the years, but I feel like mid 2010s it was like picture perfect, beautiful aesthetics. This is my home. This is how perfect I look like with my husband and kids. Like, is that the culture that's been hurting our ability to reach out for help, you think?
I think it started way, way before that. My perspective on it is that it started probably with our grandmother's generation and great grandmother's generation. My theory is that my grandmother, she's in heaven now, God rest her soul, but my grandmother never worked, right? Worked. She went through the Great Depression. She wasn't given the opportunity to work. Then our mother's generation comes along, the baby boomers come along, and they are given a different opportunity to work. But the problem is that although that generation was working, they were becoming doctors, lawyers, teachers, bankers, all of these things, the role of mother did not change. And yet those women learned from the previous generation not to complain. The people that went through the depression did not complain. So the baby boomer mothers did not complain. And yet they suddenly were doing two jobs, and they did it with their mouth shut because they were happy that they were afforded the opportunity, and they learned to not open their mouth. Then comes our generation, and social media is all of a sudden a place where you can go and start observing all of this other perfection, right? And then I honestly feel like once the pandemic hit and women were like stuck at home with the kids, doing the Zoom school, doing all of that stuff, everything broke for every single family around the world. And women were like, we're not doing this anymore, and we're going to be vocal about it. And we have hundreds of million other women on social media that are actually coming and talking about the fact that this is completely broken. And I truly feel like there is a motherhood movement and moment happening right now where things have to change, because the mothers across the world are actually breaking down and just not even able to handle it anymore. So I think the 2010s, the perfection, I think that was like the end of the era of people not actually being vocal about the fact that things are not perfect and that this is really, really hard.
Yeah, my two favorite creators that I think do that really well is Libby Ward, Diary of an Honest Mom, and Emily Jean Ferret, where she she brings you on tours around her house of all the things that are unkept and like I don't. She's definitely not a hoarder, and there are definitely areas of her house that look like she'd be like, "We're gonna take a tour around my house so you can feel better about your own."
Right.
And it makes me wonder how many really sad women for the place that they're in their lives. Like, did as much as COVID brought us so many of us to our breaking points, did it also save a lot of people because of the amount of people that were found themselves being like, I need to talk about this. Like, I can't be quiet about it. Like, do you think it's been a net positive change despite going through the eye of that storm?
I think it's been a net positive change. I think the change is still happening. And I think that the work that you're doing to open the eyes of men and open the hearts of men and make them understand that this is a real, real thing, that is change that needs to happen. And I'm probably not going to be super popular for saying this, but I think there are a lot of women sitting at the top of corporations that are still keeping their mouth shut because they want to preserve their career and their role, and they are keeping their mouth shut about how hard it is for them. And frankly, it's those women that are sitting at the top in leadership roles that need to be more vocal about saying, hey, I'm struggling. I'm a C-level executive, and this is hard for me. So I can only imagine how it is for, people that I am leading that can't afford the full-time nanny and can't afford the home chef and can't afford the house manager. those are the women that need to be more vocal and be casting more of a light on what's actually going on, so that the other men that are sitting in kind of their other leadership roles recognize that. But I think there's fear that comes with that, right? Those women have worked their butts off to get where they are, and I see why they're quieter about it.
Now, when you bring up that that type of person, C-level woman, mom, first person I think of is Sheryl Sandberg. Do you feel like she's done a good job of opening that door, writing that book, doing the TED Talk? Like, is that, I know that because I feel like I've heard both ends of the spectrum of people who really feel good about what she's done, and I think there's also a lot of people that feel like I don't think I've heard people saying that she's set things back, but that she's not doing all that she could almost. Is she one of the ones that comes to the mind that
She's one of the
is
ones that
bring us in the
comes
right
to,
direction?
yeah, but I think she's untouchable, right? So like you
Mhm.
have people that have such a level of status that it doesn't, I mean, nothing could knock her down, right? But it's the women that sit at the C levels or the VP levels of smaller companies that are just leading teams of 30 or 300 or 3,000, not millions and millions and millions, right? So I think it's that kind of less visible executive that needs to just kind of enact change within her smaller existence, if that makes sense.
Well, now I don't know if you have any of those people within your in your community, but have you seen, higher level leadership people in your community talking about like how they can spark change in their organizations or generally for other moms that are not at the same leadership level?
We have women from, kind of all different careers, levels, all of the kind of all walks of life in the community. I will say that I don't know how vocal they would be if they were kind of sitting in those positions. It is a goal of Beyond the Ninth to be much more active within corporations, where corporations are actually facilitating membership of the community so that women can get the support and the camaraderie that they need. Um, but the what's actually happening within the community, I don't know that it exists on that level that you're speaking about.
Mm. If a year from now you I, I know we discussed that a huge problem that you're solving is helping solve the loneliness aspect of it. In terms of the direction that you want to bring this community, like if a year from now, what kind of, I don't know if tangible results is the right word, but like what kind of things do you think you would want to have seen in, another 12 months from now that you feel like that the communities bring the difference that you want to see it bring?
I think that something that we're really leaning into in the community is subgroups, sub support groups, because motherhood has so many different seasons and so many different challenges that arise depending on where you are in your motherhood journey, whether you've just given birth, whether you're pregnant, whether your kids are toddlers or school age or older. And so we're really trying to lean into connecting women with other women that are in their particular season. Because if you've got a 1 month old baby, you can't really identify with what a woman is going through that has a 5 year old. And a woman with a 5 year old can't really identify with a woman that has a high schooler or an empty nester. So we're really trying to do a better job at providing, kind of those seasonal motherhood support mini groups that people can go and kind of go through different discussions with women in their season. Um, and we're also going to try and facilitate many more resources. We've got a lot of resources in the community, but I think just being a space where we pre-vet coaches, apps, resources, whatever it may be, and kind of facilitate. If you come into our community and you are trying to overcome a specific challenge, we will lead you in the right direction. We will either facilitate it ourselves or we'll lead you in the right direction to get the support that you need.
Mm. And Aram has been sharing with us because I'm realizing I need to learn more about Indra Nui, I think, is the CEO or former CEO of PepsiCo. which sounds like she was super. Are you familiar with her?
No.
So I guess Erin was sharing, she went to pick up her kids, took them to the board meeting. She showed up in both roles and really gives women tips for improving the way that they be amazing at work and be an amazing mom. I'll have to learn more from that.
Sounds awesome.
Um, you want to diversify the sub communities so that more different aspects of the seasons of motherhood are met. I think we've gone through. We're probably in our second season of parenthood. I think over here where we had the newborn stage where I felt really lonely. I had a hard time with that. I switched roles, and I think we're in our second stage where she's up and moving and she's talking and has a lot more autonomy and she has daycare, but no homework or anything yet. Um, what season are you in right now?
So my son is 6. He just started first grade this week, and my daughter is 3.5. So we're in the, kind of the young school age season. And just, I think there's all kinds of things that come with having a school age kid, and kind of trying to navigate elementary school and all the things that he's experiencing on a day-to-day basis, all the people that he's meeting, and then my daughter's 3.5. She's just kind of beginning to use her words and figure out who she is and develop her personality. But it's still a very, very physically demanding stage right now. They still need their teeth brushed. They need help getting their shoes on. They need help getting their backpacks together. My daughter is 3.5 and she still wants to be carried everywhere. And I would rather break my back than set that little lady down, even though she's so heavy at this point. But it's the sweetest thing in the whole world. But I mean, I'm exhausted, physically exhausted at the end of the day from just, for lack of a better term, manhandling my children all day and trying to get their shoes on and trying to get their teeth brushed and carrying her around. So it's a very physically demanding stage. But it's also a really exciting stage because I think this is the age where their personalities start to emerge and you're like, oh, there you are. That is the person that you are. That's what makes you laugh. That's what makes you cry. That's what lights you up inside. And it's a really, really rewarding time to start learning about who they are. But, not without challenges. They won't eat their dinner. They want mac and cheese every single night. It's like those challenges all start to come in.
I wanna have one sort of closing note here is if you could share one message with a mom that is feeling alone and is headed back to the workplace or has been in it for a little bit longer, what do you say to her?
You are not alone. It may feel like you're alone. It may feel like every single thing that you're going through is hard. It is hard, but you are not alone. And there are so many women out there who are supporting you, who are cheering you on, and who want to help you feel less alone. You just have to find your group. You have to find your place, whether it's in person, whether it's virtual, whether it's your neighborhood, your church, whatever it is. Find the place where you feel less alone because it will lift you up in ways that you didn't even know that you needed. And hang in there. Everything passes. Give it 2 weeks, give it 2 months. The phase that you're in will change. You will be met with new challenges, but these ones will fortunately pass. And just know that you're not alone. And I will also say with that kind of like nothing is permanent. If you're struggling at your job and you have a manager who doesn't understand what you're going through, or you have employers who are toxic towards you because you need to leave at a certain time of day, change your life so that you're not struggling with this. If it takes you days, weeks, months, years, it doesn't matter. Realize that you're a different human being now, and what you need now is different than what you needed before you became a mother. Do the work, put in the patience, put in the time to change your situation so that you can prosper. Because if you're not prospering and you're not healthy, you're affecting every other heart and mind and soul that is in your family. And really, the entire home revolves around the mother's well-being. So change your situation, whether, even if it takes a lot of time, change your situation so that you can be healthier.
Well, Kendra, thank you. And thank you for letting me interview you here live on LinkedIn. I'm going to post this to podcast and we're going to share some clips of this on Instagram. But I'm glad that I got to hear more about, and I hope people can hear more and appreciate the Beyond the Ninth community that I'm locked out of. But I'm sure it is. I think the fact that you set that boundary with me, and like when I went to learn more about you and said, nope, this is just for moms, like this is a place where they need to feel that safe space. Similarly with the group of men that I work with, like I don't let women in there because I think similarly, when you go to the comments section on my Instagram, it's not a kind place for men. So I know that having safe spaces available for people to not feel alone is really important.
Is really important. Yes. Thank you so much for facilitating this discussion and for all of the amazing knowledge that you're putting out there. It was awesome to chat with you.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to end the stream.